Let's now talk about what sin is. What is sin? And fortunately, the Bible is actually extremely clear about this because there are 11 words in the Hebrew language, and they all have meanings. You know, words that we translate in English like transgressions, trespasses, sin, evil. Well, there's 11 different words like that in the Hebrew language that actually have root meanings to them. And there's 8 different words in the Greek language that have meanings to them too. So 19 total words in the Bible that really kind of give us a concept. These are all, different degrees of sin or different synonyms, related to sin. So for example, in the Old Testament, I'm just going to quickly, you probably can't write this down, but just listen to this. In the Old Testament, I'm going to go through the 11 words first, kind of in increasing order of severity. So kind of the ones that are general definitions to ones that are harsher. The first word in the Old Testament of sin means to miss or err from the mark. To miss or err from the mark. A second word means to act perversely. A third word, to break away from authority. Another one, to refuse to obey or hearken. The next one, to refuse to serve God. Next one is to act treacherously. That's another word in the Hebrew language. Another one is to be rebellious. We're getting worse and worse and worse here. The next one is to be stubbornly disobedient. That's another word. Or to be wicked or impious is another word. And another word means to live worthlessly or vainly. And the final kind of the word that translates evil in the Hebrew language, the word literally means to dash to pieces God's original design. That's the meaning of the word. An evil person has just destroyed the God, concept and what he was originally intended to do. So those are the 11 words in Hebrew. In the New Testament, 8 words in Greek, similar to the Old Testament. The first one means to miss or err from the mark. The second one means to deviate from the right path. A third word means to depart from the way of truth. Another one means to refuse to conform. Another one, to disobey or to refuse to believe. Another one is to refuse to do what's right. Another one, to be ungodly or to be irreverent. And another one, to literally be evil or wicked. Now, what I want you to notice just quickly as we kind of just this brief overview of these 19 words is that I believe every one of these words implies voluntariness and viciousness. There's no quibble in the definitions of kind of what sin is. Sin is voluntary, I choose to do it, and it's an act against God. It's not a good thing. And ultimately even dashes to pieces his reason for creating me. So, to simplify this, and what I should have told my New Zealand friend many years ago on the street is this. I'm going to give you six quick, easy definitions of what sin is. Number 1, sin is to break God's law. That's the simplest one. It's to break God's law, either in spirit or in letter. The Old Testament emphasized letter. The New Testament brings in the mind, spirit. But it means to break God's law. There is a law about right and wrong, how we should treat God, how we should treat others, and to be a sinner is to break that law, to refuse to do it. Number 2, sin is a willful attitude to live contrary to the interests of God and his world. It's a willful attitude to live contrary to, let's say, the glory of God and his world. That's why in Jeremiah 12, verse 3, Jeremiah says that God examines our heart attitude toward him. Sin is an attitude, really, of heart and mind of really who's on the throne, who's number one, who is the reason we're living for. It's a willful attitude to live contrary to the interests of God and his world. Number 3, another way of actually stating number 1, sin is lawlessness. And the reason I include it this way is because that's a direct definition from Scripture. 1 John 3:4. There's actually 2 verses in the Bible that gives a direct definition of sin. But 1 John 3:4 says sin is lawlessness. Sin is, in fact, there's law, there's right and wrong, and I choose to be lawless. I choose to not do it. Okay? John Wesley, the founder of Methodism, he said this. He said, sin is a willful transgression of a known law. That's how we raise our kids. We tell our kids, here's what we expect in the home, here's what's right, and so forth. And then sin becomes it's willfully transgressing what you know to be right. And that's what it is on the human scale in terms of God too. It's lawlessness. It's willful transgression of a known law. We went over law in our last session. Here's the other direct definition from the Bible, James 4:17. Sin is disobedience. It's disobedience. James 4:17 said it's knowing what's right and not doing it. Knowing what's right. You're a moral agent. You know what you should do, or you could know if you wanted to know. You know what's right, but you choose not to do it. James 4:17. A fifth one, we define sin, is that sin is a wrong life motive. That kind of goes back to number 2, willful attitude, but I'm just using other words here. It's a wrong life motive. And you remember when we talked about the human heart, it's not giving God our supreme choice of our heart. To put it in evangelical language, it's not making Jesus the Lord of your life, giving him his rightful place. So it's a wrong life motive. And the Bible talks a lot about motives. For example, in 1 Corinthians 4, verse 5, it says that God will search the hearts and the motives of all people. And then they'll get what they deserve based on what God sees in terms of the motive of the heart. Why they are doing what they're doing. Okay? It's the why. Is it do all things for the glory of God, place him at the center of your life and keep him there on a daily basis and treat other people the way you should? Sin is a wrong life motive where it becomes, no, I'm not going to give God his rightful place, and I'm going to treat other people the way I want to, not the way I should. I'll just kind of do what I want. It's a wrong motive in both of those. And finally, number 6, and this is strong, but it comes straight out of Scripture. Sin is moral insanity. It's moral insanity. There is a wonderful God to love and have a relationship with. There are all kinds of cool people to have a relationship with too, and you automatically know that, hey, I'm no better than them. So our automatic moral consciousness tells us we ought to treat God the best and love him and live for his glory because of who he is, and we ought to treat each other equally. And to not do that is insane. It's morally insane. We know what we should. It's pretty obvious when we don't do it. And so in Ecclesiastes 9:3, that's where I get this from, the writer there said that human beings, when they sin, madness is in their hearts. Madness is in their hearts. The moral insanity of living a life of sin. So let me summarize this, and then I'll give you a little quick diagram on the board. Here's how I summarize what sin is. Sin is a choice to pursue your own happiness supremely over that of the happiness of God and others. It's, of course, breaking of the law of love, breaking of God's law. God first, others equal. It's a choice to pursue your own happiness, your own good, over that of the happiness of God and others. It is to seek your own fulfillment as your end in life. Seek your own fulfillment as your end in life. Another way to state that is to live for self-pleasure. In an orderly sequence of actions flowing from a selfish heart. A person who is lost and in sin is living for themselves. They are living primarily for their own happiness. They are doing their thing, whatever way you want to word it. Their motive is, it's kind of all about me and I'm living for me. The message of the gospel is that's what separates you from God, because that thing can't be in heaven. It doesn't work. God is who he is, we are who we are, so we are separated by this chasm of living for self when we should be living for God and others. And the penalty for that, we're going to talk about in our next session, is a big one. So the very simple way to diagram with people what sin is, it works out really well in the English language, not in all languages. I simply define it this way. That's what sin is. That's what it boils down to in my life when I commit it, or any other life. It means the big I takes over. I know what I should do. I know how I ought to treat God and treat others. I choose not to because I say to myself, I don't want to. I. I'm living for me, my own pleasure, my own self-happiness. So sin is not just making a few mistakes here and there. It's basically saying, I'm the Lord of my life. There is no other Lord. There aren't any other people. I'll kind of do with them what I want to do. I'm the God of the universe, so everything is centered around I. So getting saved is realizing that is moral insanity. And it's not any moral insanity, it's very hurtful. To get saved is to realize that's what the problem is. And God actually loved us so much, he did something about it. But we have to turn away from that and allow his Spirit to come into our lives and be reborn so that we will live by his power and his grace the way he intended us to live. So now you understand, I hope, what sin is. The question is, what are you going to do about it?